I was sitting alone in my car at the local duck pond, eating my lunch and reading a book as usual. Normally, I kept my windows open to prevent situations like this from happening, but when I first arrived, no one was around, and it was hot outside, so I rolled them all the way down. I'm not one to waste gas just to have my air conditioning on. I had been going to that pond for lunch almost every single day for the past 2 years, and had never felt uncomfortable. So surely that day wouldn't be any different. Well, I had just opened my lunch and taken a bite, when this really elderly man in a red Jeep rolls up beside me. He gets out and roams around the park for a bit before coming over and talking to me. Of course, I'm not going to be rude to the man, since that park is part of a tourist area, and I figured that he was probably either just visiting, or looking for directions, or a retired and lonely guy. We strike up a conversation, and I tell him I'm in school at the local community college and where I worked. He asked what I did there, and I told him that I was an HVAC apprentice. He said, "Wow, I used to work on HVAC stuff in the military." I thought it was really cool, and figured that someone with as much experience as him could tell me some pretty useful stuff. If I remember correctly, he did tell me some things that would be pretty useful, but the conversation quickly became predatory, and I was shocked at how quickly the conversation turned south and made me forget what he told me. He asked me how old I was. I told him I was 18, and he told me he was 52, although the guy looked like he was in his 90s at his youngest. But whatever, I figured. A lot of military people get really heavy into drugs and alcohol, so maybe that aged him a lot. He asked if I had a boyfriend. Nope. He said he had a wife, but that he cheated on her a lot, and a couple of kids who didn't like him. Well, that's a kind of deep thing to admit to a stranger, but if he's comfortable with sharing it, then I'm totally fine with it. He kept on going about how much he loved women, and how he just couldn't help himself when he cheated on his wife. Then he asked me if I was a virgin. By this point, I had already started picking up bad vibes from the guy, and really no matter what I told him, it was going to be a lose-lose situation. I was afraid that if I told him I wasn't a virgin, he'd think that I was loose, and that I'd do whatever he wanted to me. So I went with virgin, hoping that it would imply that I'm prude, and he'd give up on me. Instead, the creepy old man seemed to get off on the thought of seducing an 18-year-old virgin. I tried multiple times to steer the conversation away from sex, but he kept bringing it back up. He asked if I masturbated, watched porn, ever wanted to have sex at all. I said no, in an effort to really hit the prude ball home. I figured that he was just from an older generation that thought you had to convince women to go out with them, and that once he realized I was serious, he would give up, because no one wants to be a rapist, right? Nope. I was already really uncomfortable with this guy, but then the threats started. He kept saying that if I hung out with him, that I wouldn't stay a virgin long. He'd just say that over and over again, very firmly, like he knew he wasn't going to give me a choice in the matter. Then I realized that I was completely alone in the park with this guy. No security cameras were anywhere. No one knew I went to that pond for lunch every day. You might be asking yourself, why didn't you just turn your car on and leave? Well, I had stupidly thrown my keys into the passenger seat. I was afraid that by the time I reached the keys, pulled them in the ignition and turned them on, this old guy would have easily climbed in through the window, and would be fighting me for control of the vehicle. I continued on with the polite conversation, pretending to be unaware of his motives and ignorant to any sexual references he made. I just had to wait for the right moment, for him to sneeze, look away, let his guard down, so that I could grab my keys from the passenger seat and get out of there. Luckily for me, a school bus full of children came right when I thought I was going to have to fight this guy tooth and nail to get him to leave me alone. As soon as he saw them arrive, he looked really freaked out, and then disappointed, like he knew that he had just lost his catch. There were too many witnesses now, too many people who might intervene and would most likely secure double jail time for doing so many things whilst being around a bus full of children. He said bye to me in a normal manner and said that he would look out for me again in the park, then hopped into his red Jeep and took off. If worst had come to worst, I think I could have taken the guy in a fight. He may have been ex-military, but he looked like hell, like a strong breeze could just about break his bones. I'm glad I didn't have to fight him though, because I believe it was his intention to go out that day and find someone to rape. He also could have carried a concealed weapon somewhere. Needless to say, I avoided the park for the next month or so, and once I did return, I was really paranoid that I might see him again. Honestly, be careful about how much information you reveal about yourself to strangers. In the course of 45 minutes, I had given this guy enough information to track me down if he had really wanted to. He knew which school I went to, which program I was on and where I worked, my name, my age, my date of birth, and he could have easily written down my number plate. Just remember to be savvy and stay safe.
I was abroad in the Ukraine, the only student from my school that attended this particular program, so I was lonely and stressed out most of the time, and looking for a friend. This one local guy spoke pretty good English, was about my age, and we went to the same local university. He was an okay person. I didn't get any major creeper vibes or anything, so we ended up hanging out a lot. Tuesdays and Thursdays we would always go to the same bar together and listen to live music. One Tuesday, I wasn't feeling well, and I texted him that I was going to stay home. The following Thursday, while we were walking to the bar, he starts talking about how disappointed he was that I bailed on him. But he wasn't mad or anything, because I really did look very sick. That was alarming, because there was no way he had seen me that day. I never left the apartment. I asked him how he knew that I looked really sick, and he pulled out his phone. On it was a picture of me, taken from outside my bedroom window. I live in an old Soviet block. My apartment was 7 stories up. He must have had a camera with a great zoom, and must have camped out in one of the neighboring buildings, just waiting for me. He offered no explanation for the photo, and instead started talking about how, if I bailed on him again, he would actually get angry this time, and that I wouldn't like him when he gets angry. After that pirated line, I wanted out. But I had a feeling that if I left, bailed again, I would be in for a really bad time. So I played along for the rest of the night, even when he started getting grabby and possessive, even when he started making disgusting sexual remarks about me. I made it home safely, locked and covered everything. I told my host, Babishka, and Didishka, what happened. Didishka was an officer in the Soviet Air Force, and heavily involved with the mob after the fall. He did something to take care of the problem. I don't know what, but it worked. Hey guys, Lily C Nation here, and thank you so much for listening. No doubt you were expecting Mort, but that's okay. I can show you where he's at. If you click the link on the screen right now, we can head on over to my channel to carry on with the remaining 5 stories. I'm pretty sure Mort is hiding somewhere over there. See you real soon, my lovely lilies.